So, schönen guten Morgen nach Österreich. Mein Name ist Hans-Jörg Hörtnagel. Ich bin seit 2 Jahren österreichischer Wirtschaftsdelegierter für Indien. Bevor wir beginnen mit dem heutigen Webinar, und wie gesagt, ich freue mich, dass Sie dabei sind. Wir haben eine sehr große Anzahl heute. Ich möchte beginnen mit ein paar allgemeinen Anmerkungen zwischen den österreich-indischen Wirtschaftsbeziehungen. Wir haben derzeit jedes Jahr einen neuen Import- und Exportrekord. Indien ist derzeit die 5. stärkste Volkswirtschaft der Welt und wird bis Ende dieses Jahrzehnts zur drittgrößten Volkswirtschaft aufsteigen. Das bietet eine ganze Reihe von Möglichkeiten in sämtlichen Sektoren. Ich sage Import-Export-seitig. Wir haben derzeit 150 österreichische Niederlassungen in ganz Indien. Die Zahl ist laufend steigend, die äußerst erfolgreich tätig sind, und an die 57 Niederlassungen, die hier präsent sind. I will switch now to English. Today's topic is the Indian Space Center, the space possibilities. So the Indian Space and Research Organization, ISRO, was founded in 1969, and in 1975, India launched its first satellite. So that means India has knowledge in this space area for almost 6 decades. In the meantime, also India launched for 14 countries, 29 international nano satellites. And among these countries, also Austria. So Austria has its own space research program. This was started many years ago, and in 2013, the first Austrian nano satellite was launched by ISRO. We all have been witnesses of the recent success by ISRO, by India, with the lunar mission Chandrayaan 3. And in the meantime, India also started a solar mission. So India is a very important player in this area at the moment and will increase its strength and presence and importance in the next years. So one point that is very interesting, this Chandrayaan 3 lunar mission costed only $75 million. So this shows the importance of India, this shows the strength of India, and this shows also that India can have high-tech space launches, technologies with relatively low costs. And the interesting fact is also that this is the reason we're organizing this webinar. There is more and more participation by the private sector. There are new startups coming up. And as said, I'm glad that we have this webinar today. We have very prominent speakers. And with that, I finish and hand over to our experts and hand over to Mr. Ajay Singh, our innovation expert.
Thank you, Mr. Nagel. Good morning to the ones joining from Austria, and good afternoon to the ones joining from India and other parts of the world. My name is Ajay Singh. I am responsible for startups, new technology, and innovation at Advantage Austria, New Delhi. And the topic today, we have space technologies and the future. You know, we are already dealing with the futures technology, but still we have policies, government, and change maker who would make the difference in defining India's space technology future. Without further ado, I would like to call upon my first speaker, Mr. Anil Prakash, DG, Satcom Industry Association, to make his keynote on Indian space industry. Over to you, Mr. Prakash.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning to all of you. Thank you, Ajay-ji, for kind introduction. And I would like to take just a few minutes to give you overall study of the Indian space sector. Next, please. This slide shows that what are the Indian space economy projections and target, and we are still 2 to 3% of the global market, but we poised to grow to say about by 2030 about 10% of the global economy, and we have those ingredients which is we on the satellite manufacturing, then ground equipment and launch services and satellite services. We are all working for that, and industry is getting to for that. Next, please. So here, this is India's key capabilities are into, of course, on the manufacturing side, and we have a ISRO collaborating with 61 countries for the satellite launches, and they are so far 342 foreign satellite has been launched. Then we have a number of policy which has already been placed and are in the final stage. That gives the importance of various manufacturing and also the launch side and also geospatial side and ground segment side. So this picture shows that various elements of this capability which is available with India. Next, please. This is a area of which we are working, and here the area where we wanted to have a foreign collaboration. With this, I think in this case, Austrian industry companies we would like to talk with, we would like to collaborate with. They are into the docking, remoting, AI, ML, 3D printing, drone technology, microgravity, fluids in space, and thermodynamics and space farming. And their details are also given in the description. So this is the area which we are now working with, because the themes of the seminar is that what is the future for the space sector. So this is the future which we are working on. Next slide, please. This shows a glimpse of what are the regular and steady reforms that are being done in the country, the policy regulatory side, and it's keep adding on. And we have just been announced Indian space policy recently, and that's it. We are building that ground very concretely, and to make this non-government entities, the private sector, should work hand in hand with the state-run ISRO. Next, please. This shows our membership. We represent quite the membership from the manufacturing side, the service provider, satellite operators, startups, the legal firms, academic institutions. They represent our membership. Although membership is small in number, but we do represent complete ecosystem of the space sector. Next, please. This is our flagship event which we organize every year. It's India Space Congress. It is going to be slated from 26 to 28 June. I would like to request everyone to mark this your calendar for these dates, and we will looking forward to receiving a sizable delegation from Austria to come forward and participate in. That's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Prakash. That's a wonderful presentation. And since we know space laws, the space could be tricky. Who owns the space? What are the space laws? What are the boundaries, if they exist at all? To answer all those questions, we have Mr. Malhotra to speak on the space regulatory landscape and opportunities with India. Over to you, Mr. Malhotra.
Thank you. Good morning and good afternoon to the panelists, and as well as the audience who have taken out their valuable time to share this experience with us. Just wanted to take a brief journey through some sort of providing an overview of the Indian space industry from the standpoint of the regulatory policy and the legal scenario. I think Mr. Anil Prakash, just before me, has encapsulated some of the milestones that our country and the government and the regulatory process has gone through, especially in the last couple of years, which has given a lot of confidence, not just to the industry in the country, as in domestic players, but also to entities and governments across the world. So, of course, it is extremely timely that we are having this discussion right now on the backdrop of a stellar success of the Indian Space and Research Organization, ISRO, in achieving what it did with Chandrayaan. And I hope I guess we all hope across the world that the project on the solar mission achieves the similar kind of success. But it's important to know how this pie of the space economy from a commercial standpoint is likely to increase and address the needs of the Indian and the international industry when it comes to specifically to India. May I have the next slide, please? So, as perhaps we all know, historically, the space sector has been controlled, regulated, managed, etc., by the Indian government. As perhaps some of us would know and some of us won't, which is why I'm clarifying this, that the Department of Space, the importance that it garners as a department within the Indian government is seen from the fact that it is part of the Prime Minister's office. So the amount of importance, the amount of activity, the amount of oversight that is carried out in relation to these activities and the high pedestal that it is placed at is evident from that aspect. Largely, the private players were involved in the process of India's journey into space, but they were primarily involved as being vendors or suppliers downstream as part of the government's space program. From an international standpoint, I've listed out the important international treaties and the obligation that India needs to abide by, the Rescue Agreement, Space Liability Convention, Registration Convention, and of course the OST. So we are very compliant with what is the requirement of international law as far as space and outer space is concerned. Now, for the longest time, we had a certain set of regulations which seemed to be fairly ambiguous and therefore provided a huge scope for discretion to be exercised while allowing a foreign entity to participate in the space economy in India. And therefore, there was a need which gathered momentum beginning 2015. And, it was quite heartening that even though we were all grappling with the issue arising out of COVID, in 2020 itself, in the month of May of 2020, May or June, is when the Finance Minister of India, while making certain other important announcements, also made a categorical announcement about the enhancement of the role of the private players in India's journey in space. And shortly thereafter, we had the creation of an entity which has today, and I will shortly deal with it, which has today acquired a sense of seminal importance in addressing the needs both of the government and the private sector as far as regulation and policy is concerned and authorizations are concerned for initiating and carrying on space activity in the country. So in order to realize that potential that India has on offer, these non-governmental entities have been asking the government of India to come out with an updated version of the space policy so as to be able to offer their best to the economy in India. May I have the next slide, please? This resulted in the Indian Space Policy document of 2023, which was released in April this year. So it's only about 5 or 6 months old. Just as a backdrop, the announcement, and also to just demonstrate to this audience that it is not as if the government of India went to sleep for 3 years between June of 2020 and April of 23. Very soon after that announcement was made by the finance minister, in October of 2020 itself, it started out a flurry of activities where about 9 different drafts of activity dependent drafts of policies in the space sector were released for public consultation. It contained the Space Comm policy relating to satellite communications. It contained the geospatial policy. It contained aspects of technology transfer. It contained aspects of travel, space travel. So it's there was a huge amount of work that was being carried on simultaneous with, of course, fighting with the COVID pandemic. And we saw, as Mr. Prakash's presentation before me pointed out, a sudden flurry of activity beginning 2022 when some of these policies started seeing the light of day in terms of being notified. It's starting off with the geospatial rules, etc., notified by the Department of Science and Telecom. The space policy of 2023, of course, deals with a much larger set of activities than just the satellite communication. And it sets out in fair amount of detail what the vision of this policy is and how it intends to go about achieving it. So vision is something which is set out in this slide, which is to augment space capabilities, enable, encourage, and develop a flourishing commercial presence in space, and use space as a driver of technology development and derive benefits in allied areas and pursue international relations. So it's for the first time that a categorical statement has been made by the government of India through this policy, where it permits non-governmental entities to undertake end-to-end activities in the space sector through establishment and operation of what is referred to as space objects, and also, of course, augment that with ground-based assets and other activities. And the entity that I mentioned to you a little earlier, IN-SPACe, is established to act as a single window for authorization of all such activities, issue guidelines, procedures, and primarily enable the ease of doing business. ISRO, which was the flag bearer of the entire space program for India, will transition to more of a research and developmental role for new space technologies, applications, and increase in the human understanding, approach, access to the outer space. Next slide, please. In terms of the powers given to the Indian to the IN-SPACe, in fact, that space policy sets out the difference in the responsibilities and the powers that have been delineated amongst the following entities. IN-SPACe, of course, has the highest number of responsibilities and obligations to discharge vis-a-vis the growth of the space sector. It should act, as I said, as a nodal agency to coordinate authorizations and promotion of space in India. There is, of course, ISRO, as I mentioned, which is transitioned to a research and developmental role. There is New Space India Limited, which will act as a commercializing arm of the government and to commercialize technologies and other aspects that are being developed by ISRO. And there's, of course, the Department of Space, which retains overall control in terms of policy and regulatory sphere in this area. But some of the more specific aspects that have been outlined by IN-SPACe in the subsequent documentation that has been released by the entity includes a set of authorization guidelines, draft authorization guidelines that have been issued, and it's inviting some input from the industry to carry out further discussions, and it put on itself an obligation to try and clear the authorization process in a matter of 4.5 months from the acceptance across all stakeholders of the application that is made by an entity that wishes to engage in this area. Some of the other aspects, as I said, the frequency coordination between satellite capacity providers is promoted. There is this entire looming question as to whether or not, for satellite communication purposes, for use of spectrum, whether the recommendation or the roadmap will be to go down the path of auctions or to do administrative allocations. And both IN-SPACe as well as the industry largely would want to go down the path of administrative allocations because of the difficulty in ascertaining what a price would be for auction spectrum. There are various stakeholders and departments that have been set out under the policy. Some of these have been listed out in this slide with their respective activities. So it's not just that the policy is notified, it actually has gone beyond that to set out specific timelines, objectives, roles of the various entities, and to clearly give a message to the industry, that the private industry, that this is not just a lip service announcement, but there is some work that is being done to achieve what the government is set out to achieve. Yeah, the next slide, please. From a global space standpoint, as I've said, presently, while the Indian space economy is valued at 8 billion, it is expected to grow fivefold to 40 billion by 2040. We will by then hopefully be a reasonable size of the overall space industry worldwide. And there are some certain additional measures that are still in the works. Foreign direct investment policies yet to be announced. As I said, the auction or the administrative allocation aspect needs to be taken to be addressed. And there is an industry-led initiative to ask the government to provide a level playing field across all types of players, private players, whether those are incorporated in India or overseas, of course, subject to the foreign direct investment guidelines being notified. Another aspect that has been increasingly been talked about is the space insurance, but that's also an aspect that is being worked in collaboration with the industry and in space. I think all in all, it's a very exciting time to be part of the Indian space ecosystem, and we would definitely invite you to be participating in this endeavor and take things forward in earnest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Malhotra, for this wonderful presentation. May I invite Mr. Bhaskar Puri from Invest India to make his presentation on the space economy. Over to you, Mr. Puri.
Thank you, Ajay. I hope I'm audible as.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So good morning and good afternoon, everyone whoever has joined in. I'm Bhaskar Puri. I lead the Make in India space team at Invest India. I'll explain a little more about what Invest India does later on in the presentation. So this is about the Indian space economy. Next slide, please. Yeah. So much of what I'm going to cover has already been covered actually by Mr. Prakash and Mr. Malhotra. But if you look at the Indian space economy today, it started from very humble origins a few decades ago. Today, it is the 7th largest space economy in the world, has over 2.5% of the global space economy market share, and is also seeing a lot of public and private investment. From the public side, New Space India Limited, NSIL, as explained earlier, they've already announced an investment of $1.2 billion in the sector over a period of 5 years. In the private sector, Indian space tech companies have already attracted over $100 million in investment. Indian space economy and Indian space program is commercially viable as well, as demonstrated by the fact that over the last 24-25 years, ISRO has launched over 400 foreign satellites and has earned a revenue of over 270 million in the process. And the attractiveness that this sector holds today for the private sector and the involvement that is seeing from the non-governmental private entities, or NGPs for short, is quite visible today. So India today has over 3.5% of the world's space tech companies, and in terms of startups has over 100 startups in the sector. So overall, the sector is, as of today, also it is growing very fast. It is highly attractive to foreign players as well to come and enter. But what is there for the future? What is in the offering for the future as well? That is something that I would like to tell as well. Next slide, please. So this is what we are looking at. So as covered by Mr. Malhotra as well, so 40 billion is the lower end of the estimate for the space economy in 2040. The upper end is up to 100 billion estimated size of Indian space industry by 20. And around the same time, we also expect us to be 10% of the global space economy. And in the nearer term, say the next 2-3 years, we are seeing a growth of around 7-8% across all the 4 major segments of the space domain. And opportunities exist across the entire spectrum of space-based applications, right from satellite TV, radio, broadband, other media applications, IoT navigation, to all the observation and remote sensing based applications as well. So including some niche ones as well, such as agricultural monitoring, oceanography, and the traditional ones as well, such as reconnaissance. Next slide, please. So you've already seen 4 indicators in the first slide. I'll give you a few more. So ISRO, anyway, in the past 2 years has signed 6 agreements with 4 countries to launch foreign satellites. Indian space tech startups, there are 100 plus right now, and they are growing at an increasing rate year on year, as you can see. And these startups are also getting the funding at a highly accelerated rate. So in 2021 itself, these startups got a funding of more than 196% growth year on year from the previous year. It got a funding of 68 million in that year itself. And the interest that this sector is receiving from the from private sector has led to the development of 2 new space industrial clusters as well in the southern states of Tamil Nadu and Kerala, which are in geographically advantageous locations for space launches as well. And these space clusters are meant to host private sector manufacturing, R&D, and operations. And the transfer of technology and commercialization of mature technology that ISRO has taken up is reflected in the MOU that it has signed with the Department of Space and NSIL as well, to transfer all these to the industry as well for commercialization on a much larger scale as well. Next slide, please. So much of this slide has already been explained, but let's say I am a foreign investor or foreign company. I want to enter into the Indian market in terms of space. How do I go about this? So this is the regulatory framework that we need to understand. So there is the central body here, which is Department of Space, which all the other entities are connected to, as it is the central government department for this domain. Then there is ISRO, as already explained, National Space Agency of India, Antrix Corporation Limited, which is the commercial and marketing arm for ISRO for marketing the launch of foreign satellites and other such operations that ISRO takes for other outside entities, takes up for other outside entities. Then we have NSIL, New Space India Limited, which is the government-owned space-related products and services company, essentially a public sector unit of the Department of Space. Then IN-SPACe, as explained, is the central regulatory nodal agency for private sector activities in this domain. And there are space associations such as SATCOM Industry Association, who are quasi-public traders organizations representative of the Indian space industry. And if I'm a private company, I want to enter this market, I require approvals from the government and associated bodies, say for spectrum use or ground station operations or use of launch infrastructure. Then the process that I follow is I am a private company. I have a one-stop shop, which is IN-SPACe. I submit my proposal there, the application for that, the use that I'm going to do basically in this domain. So I submit my application to IN-SPACe. IN-SPACe evaluates the application and sends it to Department of Space, ISRO, and the other ministries, mainly Department of Telecommunications as well, particularly with respect to satellite communications, and receives their feedback on that application, and then grants the approval to the private company, and then I can, as a private company, go about the task that I want to do. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, so key policies, I think, has already been explained by the previous speaker, so I will skip this one. Next slide, please. And yeah, future possibilities in space sector. So first is the kind of direct investment that this sector is being open to. Right now, the FDI policy that we have seen, it allows for up to 100% of FDI in this sector, but through the government route. But we are expecting further liberalization of this FDI regime as well in this sector, of similar to what has happened in defense. And perhaps we'll see up to say 74% of FDI or even more than that through the automatic route as well. So that is something that is expected in the near future. And we hope to see a lot of direct investment, say in satellite communication and remote sensing applications. Then ISRO is planning to work on reusable launch vehicles, which will further bring down the launch costs, which are actually some of the lowest in the world right now for ISRO, by another 50%. So that is another thing that is on the cards. And as explained earlier, technology transfer is happening from ISRO to private companies as well. And it is happening through NSIL as well as IN-SPACe. And the trend that we are seeing in the industry, so which is miniaturization of satellites to cube, nano, and micro satellite constellations, and more constellation launches in low Earth orbits to provide downstream services, mainly satellite broadband and IoT, is happening on a much larger scale, and India is probably the perfect place to go for this, as I will explain in the succeeding slides as well. Next slide, please. So why India, basically? So there are two particular aspects that I would like to focus on here. First is the space industrial clusters that are developing. And there are three of them which are actually pretty major. One is actually an aerospace cluster as well, so which is there in Bangalore. So it is near the international airport there and has ready runway access as well to the runway in that airport. So you can test out all your equipment as well over there if you want to. Then there's the K Space Park in Thiruvananthapuram in Kerala, as mentioned.
I think we had a little difficulty with Mr. Puri's laptop. So I take this honor to invite my next speaker, Manaslu Space. Mr. George, can you come and make a presentation, please?
Yeah. So can I get control?
Yes.
I still haven't received that. Just a second. Okay, Ajay, you can do the next part. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to showcase Manaslu's journey in this webinar. So so Manaslu Space is developing a propulsion system for satellite industries. So Manaslu Space is on a mission to make space accessible, sustainable, and safe for all mankind. So our CEO and CTO both worked on India's first student IIT satellite called Pratham. It was launched on September 2016 on PSLV. Our founding founders were developing this satellite. During that time, they came to know about how space has potential to solve problems on Earth. This inspired them to start Manaslu Space Technology. So right now, the problems in space. The rapid growth of satellite and space debris is threatening the future space explorations. Around 166 million debris are currently revolving around the Earth. And it is projected to cross 100 billion by 2029. At the same time, 57,000 new satellites are already planned to launch by 2029. Putting up so many satellites is also going to increase the risk of collision. So as you can see in the image, to avoid a debris, satellite has to use its propulsion system to move out of its way. And the existing satellite propulsion systems are very slow, intoxic, and not safe. So next, please. So we are developing a complete propulsion system for satellite industries. So as you can see in the image, a thruster with a satellite propulsion system with 4 thrusters. So our 3 major innovations are a new satellite fuel, which is non-toxic and highly efficient. A new satellite engine, which is optimized to work with the new fuel formulation. A new high temperature catalyst, which can initiate combustion within these engines. Next, please. So what makes us different from the other satellite propulsion systems in the market? So we are using an innovative fuel which is non-toxic in nature and highly efficient. It achieves 50% higher efficiency compared to the traditional fuel like hydrogen. It provides rapid response to avoid debris using less amount of fuel. And it is 60% affordable compared to the other traditional fuels in the market. It also provides satellites to stay in orbit for longer period of time while remaining safe and agile. Next. So we offer a range of satellite propulsion system depending on its size and performance requirement. Like iBooster system, which targets satellites weighing more than 100 kg with a total impulse of 10,000 Newton second. Vyom2U and Vyom1U targets mid-size CubeSat and small-size CubeSats. Next. So we are also planning in-space services like in-space refueling to increase the lives of satellite in orbit. Life extension services to take control of malfunctioning satellites in the orbit. Deorbiting services to dispose this satellite after their end of life. So currently Tushar Jadhav as CEO and Astesh Kumar as CTO is currently leading the organization, and this is our team which is currently developing the satellite propulsion system for the satellite industry. Next. So we have started our journey in 2016 and we have recently raised a 3 million pre-series A funding which will help us to test our 2U propulsion system by September 2024. Next, please. Next. So we have also received different recognitions from worldwide throughout our journey. As Manaslu Space, our target is to become a global leader in propulsion systems to help the new space industries to launch satellites in different orbital regimes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jaws, for your wonderful presentation. May I ask all the speakers to please turn on your camera and microphone? We have a couple of questions we would like you to answer. Yes. So of course, the first question on Chandrayaan 3 mission and the famous quote by ISRO director, India is on the moon. So what it means for the Europe or especially for the Austin companies, what it means in your point of view, this recent success of Chandrayaan 3, how it's opening doors for the Austin companies in India. I would like to ask Mr. Anil Prakash first, and then we go ahead.
Thank you, Ajay. It's a very relevant question because successful Chandrayaan mission, Chandrayaan 3 missions, and now Aditya L1, which is a solar mission, there is a great level of participation from the private sector. That's make that they have built up a quite strong, robust and reliable ecosystem in the country, and that is also leaves a confidence into globally that the Indian companies are well tuned to the maturity level that they can collaborate with international companies. So I think there is a great hope and great desire from Indian companies to participate and collaborate with foreign companies, and so is the case with Austrian companies. So that shows the readiness in the Indian sector.
Mr. Puri, what do you think from the government's perspective on the recent success and also the opportunities which it's opening for India? What would be your take on that? Mr. Puri, can you hear us? Okay, maybe we move to Mr. Malhotra. From the legal point of view, you explained the space laws. What do you think, and what is your view on the recent Chandrayaan-3 missions and India's success and how it's opening Indian space sector for the Austrian companies? What is your view?
So, as I had said, I think the success of the Indian space program, as demonstrated, through various other projects, and of course, most latest is Chandrayaan, emboldens the economy to demonstrate that it is not just a place, where it can be used as a launch pad for launching of various satellites, but there is immense amount of know-how, technology, human resource and technical knowledge, which can definitely be engaged in by for not just the entities in India, but also entities coming in from overseas to be able to leverage and harness whatever is available within the space program in India, and to then, of course, be able to go to new heights. I think one aspect that I missed mentioning during my presentation, and which is relevant, is that whereas the policy sets out the roadmap for what we all seek to achieve from a particular sector, I think apart from the FDI policy, which should be announced very soon, there is also a need perhaps to have a legislation specifically catering to commercial activities in India, so that the rights and liabilities of parties engaging in this becomes very clear and pronounced. So I think with that, there will be an entire ecosystem that is built to invite entities, persons from Austria to be able to come and make the most of the space economy in India.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Puri, you mentioned that this space industry and the space sector is definitely comes under Prime Minister Modi's vision and mission. What do you think, and what are the opportunities for the Austrian companies with recent Chandrayaan-3 mission? Maybe you can spend 5 minutes on that and let us know from the government perspective.
Yeah, I think I would say, given how the space sector is evolving and the market opportunities that are coming up over here, see, Chandrayaan-3 is a demonstration of India's capability of achieving success in highly sophisticated space missions at a much lower cost than what would be a global benchmark for such a level of mission sophistication or complexity. So that is a demonstration. But in terms of the opportunities that, say, Austrian companies have today, so the biggest one that I would say is satellite manufacturing and launch from India itself. Because as I actually got kind of cut off in the middle of my presentation, but as I wanted to tell later on in the presentation as well, India has some of the lowest launching costs in the world. All right. So, and you would want to, given the nature of the sector itself, want to build and launch around the same location. So you want to build your satellite near your launching platform itself or launch location itself, so that the logistics supply chain is not stretch that long for such a sensitive equipment. So when you combine these two, India offers unprecedented advantages, especially for companies from Austria, which are probably looking at launching, say, 35, 40 satellites constellation, or 50 up to 50 satellite constellation, because some of the launch costs, especially with the commissioning of the small satellite launch vehicle SSLV by ISRO, are absolutely the lowest in the world. ISRO today, or basically SSLV today, will cost you around $4.5 million for launching 500 kgs payload into low Earth orbit. That sort of a price today for 500 kg payload is not available anywhere in the world, absolutely anywhere. Even SpaceX today, it may have a lower per kilogram, dollars per kilogram price for launching your payload in space, but it does not have a small vehicle for launching. So those kind of advantages are there. Even if you go for multiple launches, it has a lot of benefit for you in terms of overall cost that you're going to incur for building the satellites, which are competitive or on par with the rest of the developed world, maybe slightly higher, but all of that is offset by the much lower launching costs that are there in India for small satellite constellation operators, so people who are looking to build maybe 35, 40 satellites and launching them. That is one aspect. The second aspect that we have is software development or downstream application development in India. There are over 10,000 highly experienced aerospace engineers in India, in the space sector as well. And 45,000 people are directly employed with the space sector in India. And as everyone is aware in the world today, India has a lot of cost advantages when it comes to software development as well. So in terms of Austria or Europe, specifically speaking, you can expect up to 55% lower cost developing it in India rather than in Europe. In terms of US, it is a 60% cost save. And you have all this talent which is highly experienced, ready in the sector. So in these two aspects are there. It's a no-brainer. You want to develop your software or your downstream application, India is probably the best place to do it. Set up your engineering center here. And if you want to build and launch small satellite constellations, again, India is the best place to do this.
That's very insightful. And you mentioned in your presentation, unfortunately, I think because of the internet issue, we had to switch to next speaker. I would like to elaborate on your take on startups. You mentioned 100 space startups are in India, and some of them we know them personally, professionally, we meet them, and they are doing wonderful jobs. What are the opportunities for Austrian startups, especially in space tech, you think are in India?
Well, see, a lot of Austrian startups, I would say, or for that matter, startups in that region, European region itself, they have worked on a lot of niche technologies as well for space. Some of them I know have worked on propulsion systems for small satellites as well. Austrian startups are also working in this area. Also, small satellite designs, miniaturization, those things are there. And all of those things probably give them a competitive advantage as well in the Indian landscape, because the entire, I would say, space sector today is taking that direction, where miniaturization is happening and new technologies for communication transponders and for propulsion systems in small satellites is being devised and deployed in small satellites. So if they would like to then utilize the opportunities for manufacturing and launching in India, then that is a big plus for them because of the technological work that they've already put in for developing these niche technologies.
That's really interesting. Now we move to our startup here. Mr. George, what opportunities Austin space tech companies can expect from your company in India?
So as I covered in my slide, so we are developing a satellite propulsion system. So we are looking for people who can provide us a payload, a satellite payload, which will help us to launch our system to space and do flight test as soon as possible. So we need people like as Mr. Puri was telling, like the PSLV launch, it helps the startups to do as cheap as possible. So we are also a startup. We are looking for support, like in which we can get some payloads and we can attach our propulsion system and launch it as soon as possible, and it will help us in our future development also as a startup.
Perfect, thank you. We are running out of time. Since I will just ask one line from each of the speaker on the opportunities for the Austin companies with their respective organization. I would start with Mr. Malhotra. In your own view, what opportunities Austin company can have with your organization, and why they should reach out to you, and how you will going to help them?
So the landscape in India with regards to the policy, regulatory, legal regime is still in the process of being shaped up. So because of the fact that we have been at the forefront of only a handful of law firms and lawyers that are actually specializing in this area, we not only have a historical background of how the law has developed and who the stakeholders are and what the various aspects of getting permissions, authorizations, etc. are, but also the input and expertise from the point of view of a wide range of activities, including setting up the entity, your compliances, your employee-related issues, your intellectual property protection, and taking you through the entire process of what really is required for setting up business in India, and also to manage and exploit it to the potential, and of course to minimize legal risks. That's the reason why I think that in the event that Austrian entities are looking at entering India, we would be the right choice for them to collaborate as far as legal, regulatory, and policy initiatives are concerned. Thank you.
Perfect. Mr. Prakash, what opportunities and also your contribution, your organization's contribution in the space industry, what do you think Austin companies should reach out you to?
Yes, thank you. See, we are a CENTCOM industry association. We represent complete space ecosystem, and as I said, our membership encompass all of them. And we as an industry association, we believe in collaboration, and there we can lead the future space world. So we can provide all sort of, because we have the interest of commercial interest in mind, that what our members they're trying to do, not only in the public advocacy, regulatory and standardization, but also we work very closely in the ease of doing business, taxes reform, import and export regime. These are all we work in. So we welcome Austrian companies who are looking for India as a destination. They can join us as a member, and we can offer them provide all kind of information solution to that. So that's a thing we can do.
Perfect. Mr. Puri, again to you, the opportunities. We know Invest India offer many opportunities in all sectors in India, especially in space tech.
Yeah, so as explained earlier, Invest India is the national investment facilitation and promotion agency of the government of India. We directly come under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. We are there only and only to handhold foreign investors and ensure a smooth investment journey for them in India, so that they can ground their investment. And not just that, if they would like to expand further in India as well, we are there to help them in every way. So we are well connected with both the government side from the ministry at the central government level as well as the state government level, and the industry side with industry associations like SATCOM as well. We are very closely working with them as well, as for outreach in this sector, as well as for partnering with industries and directly with industries as well. And throughout the entire investment journey, we handhold foreign investors who are looking to come and set up in India, from the opportunity assessment to market entry advisory, and during the investment phase, from say all the incentives that are available to the site identification, location advisory, any kind of other regulatory clearances that may be required, and we'll support them in that as well. And once the investment has been
I think we have again some trouble with Mr. Puri's internet connection. Mr. Jaws, quickly, why Austin companies should reach out to you and what they're getting out of it?
Yeah, so as a startup, we are always looking for partners who can support us, especially on satellite payloads and all. It will also help us to launch our propulsion system in space and do our flight test as soon as possible. So like we would always love and welcome Austrian companies to connect with us and always work together and do something good in space. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, speakers. I would ask Mr. Anil Prakash for the concluding remark, and then I would ask Mr. Hansyoga Nagal to conclude the webinar. Mr. Prakash, first you.
Okay. Thank you. I think this is very exciting and that we have shared with the Austrian space industry, and we are running this program with various countries and with partnership of Invest India and also the TNT Law. So this is basically one message we wanted to give out to the outside world, that India is ready to collaborate, and here is the time now, because I think the world is changing very fast, and India shown its capabilities to the fullest. I think this is the time that we should, as Mr. Puri mentioned about that, the cost of doing a business or creating something in India is far more cheaper than outside. So you can send out your sub-assembly, you can make it complete product, or you can design your payload, you can co-work with the industry here. So not only for your country, but also for the third country. So that will be ample opportunities are available. I just wanted to just share our initiative of the startup. I just want to share because how one country startups can help other country startups. We have selected about 8 startups from Indian things. So we took them to Taiwan. And, there is a soft landing program. They were there in Taiwan for 1 month. They have met with the industry. They exchanged their dialogue with the startup in Taiwan. Also, the other startup which has come from Australia, then US, Malaysia, they also work with it. So I found the new sort of bonding is emerging between the startup when they meet. So the actually innovation can happen anywhere, any part of the world. So the startups in Australia may be a different providing different product and solution and services. The startups in India, there is always room for collaborating at a startup level, and industry can always help them to rise up to above. So that's the industry association. We are bring the industry as a mentorship to the startups, as well as meeting ground for startups to startup to industry. So this is we very much like this to happen with Australian startup, Indian startup. That's all.
Sure, Mr. Prakash. Now I would like to thank you all the speakers. Thank you very much for your wonderful participation. Now I hand over to Mr. Hansyoga Nagal for the concluding remark.
Thank you, Ajay. First of all, thank you to all our speakers for sharing their deep knowledge, for spending the time with us, also for inviting the Austrian community in the space sector to come to India, for offering your help. Of course, also thank you for the offer participating at the space exhibition next year in June. So anytime if Austrian companies are interested, please get in touch with us. We need minimum 5 companies. We can organize a trade delegation or a small exhibition there. So for me, the most important what I take from the day, as we heard, the Indian share in the space program at the moment is 2.6%. But hearing about these major points about the cost effectiveness, about the new law, which is new regulations coming up in India, this will bring new companies, private companies entering the sector, traditional companies, but as well also startup companies. So this brings a lot of new possibilities for the Austrian companies in that area. As we know, Austria, of course, is not a major player in the space sector, but they have a full range, many Austrian companies which are providing state-of-the-art technology in the space sector. So I'm sure this will bring a lot of possibilities for them in the future in the Indian market. And definitely, India will grow considerably in the next decade. With that, I'm coming to the end of this webinar. Just quickly, in 1 week, we have a trade delegation with the topic Smart and Green City in 3 Indian major cities. Then 25th of October, we have a webinar, The Future of Data Protection, IPR in India. I would like to explain, we in our office, we have 100 offices all over the world and only 13 innovation officers. Mr. Anshit Singh is one of our worldwide innovation officers out of 13. And his task is to inform the Austrian companies about the events, the major trends going on in India. So we started a webinar series with the topic, The Future of in India. And every month we organize a webinar organizing Austrian companies about the latest developments and future perspectives in India. And I would like to invite you also, end of November, we're organizing a startup delegation from Austria. We are working, our office, we're working a lot with Indian startups. We had last year 4 Indian startups delegation bringing to Austria. We want to promote Austria, especially Vienna, as a hub for the German-speaking market. Now, for the first time, we're organizing a trade delegation for Austrian startups coming to India. End of November is the Tech Summit in Bangalore, and we would like to invite you to participate in that. With that, I thank you for participating and wish you a nice day. Thank you much.